What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel for another conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about, well, I'm going to be kind of answering a question that I get a lot, and I have answered it before in a few of my videos, somewhat tongue in cheek, but in this video, I do want to kind of give a full breakdown, if you will, to kind of answer this question. And this question is, why am I uninterested in engaging directly with believers? Not just the ones in my comments, but just also ones who invite me to do different things, typically like debates and stuff like that. And in most cases, I'm highly uninterested. I gave a little bit of insight to this when I did a video of me turning down the Kent Hovind debate. Like, yeah, I'm not interested. So I did give a little insight there, but I wanted to give a little bit of give a little deep dive here, and I think this is actually going to be a helpful conversation. So before we jump into this, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, consider joining, connecting, or supporting this community channel or content in any way that makes sense for you. And then also, like, we have some of the dopest merch in the game, so check it out. And we have books. Check those out too. All right, so let's jump into this. You know, this is going to be an interesting one because there's certain places where you're likely think where you will likely think I'm going to zig and I'm probably going to zag, and so just kind of hold on for this one. This is going to be an interesting ride. On one hand, I'm answering the question of why I choose not to directly engage with believers, but on the other hand, I'm also talking about the importance of respecting other people's journey. So that's some of that zigzag going on. But one of the many reasons that I don't engage directly with believers is that I understand how deeply convinced they are of their beliefs and how unwilling they may be to consider a more realistic view of the world. I'm not arrogant enough nor mature enough to believe that anything I say will change their minds. Recognizing this, I refrain from attempting to challenge their convictions head on. I understand that meaningful change in beliefs cannot be forced, but must come from within individuals when they are ready and willing to reconsider their perspectives. When that day comes, my videos and resources and this community will be available to support them on their journey. But until that day comes, I really won't be engaging in too many conversations. And that's not to say, like, oh, so you just don't talk to believers. No, that's not the case. I just wouldn't talk to believers about their beliefs, while they still believe them. Um, and I mean, I think me saying it like that should trigger some things for people immediately. It's like, oh yeah, that's probably not a logical pursuit. Having a conversation with somebody about their beliefs while they still believe them, while they still, like, literally unadulterated, they're unashamedly, unapologetically attached to these beliefs. No, at that moment, they are more convinced that there is something they can say to change my mind, and there isn't, and ultimately, and that's kind of the rub, isn't it? This one isn't in my notes, but I think I can throw this one in here. Like, the Christians who come to my comments are coming to change my mind. I'm not sharing content to change their mind. You know, and that's the difference. I am every bit of missional in my approach, but I'm not evangelical. I'm not trying to convert anybody. It's not it's not an interest of mine. It's not an interest of mine to convert people. Do I want people to deconvert? Yes. I have no interest to convert people, though. I have no interest in playing that role. I have no interest in being that person. Let me mute my computer over here. It's my work computer. I had to mute it or it will start dinging in about 2 minutes. Um, But yeah, so when that day comes, the resources will be here for them. Our community will be here for them. But the content I produce, which I think that's the main video on my page, it's really not for believers. I don't produce content for believers. I produce content for people who are already questioning their beliefs, who have already questioned their beliefs, or people who do no longer have these attachments to these beliefs and are interested in building community beyond these beliefs. So The first thing is we have to acknowledge the strength of people's conviction, right? So many believers have held their faith most of their lives. These beliefs are often intertwined with their identity, their community, their culture, and their worldview. Challenging these beliefs will feel like a personal attack, leading to defensiveness and further entrenchment. All right. So that's just like one of those things like, yeah, I don't know, like I can't think of an exact scenario, but I know they exist where there's certain things you're trying to do, and if you mess with it too much, the thing will go the opposite way, and so you realize at that moment, stop. I think I see this in movies a lot. Yeah, that's what it is. Like somebody will have like I don't know, like a bug or something, like a plant. Somebody's embedded something into them in them to track them or something, and then they go to try to get it out, but it's one of these type of trackers that every time you touch it, it moves further, and so at that moment, it moves further away. At that moment, you realize that you need a different strategy, right? So if I know that every time I bring this up to you directly, it's going to push you further away, then I want to think of a different strategy, you know? So um, we must remember that religious beliefs cannot be reinforced by evidence, which means they're not being reinforced by evidence. So evidence is not what's going to change these people's minds in most cases, because evidence is not what led them to the beliefs. Now, I'm not saying evidence will never change anybody's mind, but this is a real question. Everyone's asking, why isn't evidence enough? Because evidence was never the point of contention. Evidence is the point of contention for the reasonable person, not the believer. And let me be careful there. I'm not necessarily saying that believers are unreasonable. Well, I am. I am saying that believers are unreasonable about their beliefs. I'm not saying they're unreasonable about every area of their life. But no, the beliefs are absolutely unreasonable. And that's the same thing I say about myself. When I believe these things were unreasonable to believe. That was the realization that I had to come to in order to stop believing them. But yeah, so it's typically not evidence. They are often entrenched in experiences. These beliefs are not reinforced by evidence, they're reinforced by experiences with loved ones, family, friends, and community members. Understanding this helps me realize that even when I'm highlighting the flaws of the beliefs, many of them will internalize that as their own personal flaws and the flaws of the loved ones who contributed to these entrenching experiences. Among the many reasons that religious superstition persists, in my mind, is the strong undercurrent of ancestor worship and ego worship that seems to be at the core of nearly all religious thought. And I think that's something we don't consider as much because it's such a I hate I don't want to say I hate, I'm not as comfortable with the term subconscious as I would like to be. I just feel like there's a better term that we haven't landed on yet. But this is almost on a subconscious level, that to the point where, like, if you ask the person flat out, they're not going to tell you, no, this is about my grandma, my grandpa, or my Uncle Joe. If you ask them straight out like that, do you believe this just because you love your grandmother so much? The answer is going to be absolutely no. No, I believe this because it's true. I believe this because this is real. But this is a person who also has an unreasonable belief. So they're not coming to these conclusions based off of any reasonable, dependable process. You know, so what I typically do is I'll have create some deep conversation that doesn't seem like we're going there. Zig, Zach, doesn't seem like we're going there, and they'll end up saying other things like like no, my grandmama wouldn't have lied to me, and that's when you start hearing that I see what this is really about. See, you were never convinced of this belief system yourself. You were convinced that somebody else was convinced who you loved. And that person being convinced and you loving that person creates a very strong connection. And like almost all of us of the human species have to wrestle with this undercurrent of ancestor worship, and that's how we get to the ego worship. Because if I'm calling if my belief is that everybody who came before me got it right, that they had a better understanding, then I am also entrenching this type of familial superiority which is ultimately how you get ethnocentrism in the first place. It starts, as family centrism, you know, ancestor worship. Yep. All right. So let's go. All right. So understanding that everyone's path is unique encourages patience and empathy rather than confrontation. Which is why they get poor fella. And I know some people think that that's not empathetic, but it is. Poor fella is very empathetic. Oh man, poor fella. We say it all the time. Poor buddy. You know, very empathetic. But no. But see, we all have different lived experiences that no one who has ever met us can account for. So, as much as I know about my journey, my experiences, and how damaging superstition, especially religious superstition, is, I still don't know enough about the variables of another person's individual lived experience to determine when, why, or even how they should deconvert. You know, and as much as I would like for everybody to deconvert overnight, the reality is these things take time. A tightrope that we're going to have to learn how to walk in the secular community is how to promote free thought and critical inquiry without assaulting the autonomy of individuals who are still on the way. And I admit this is a tough one because every time I hear somebody say something stupid, I want to say, hey, that shit is stupid. And then for the most part, I will. But by the same token, and again, this is why community becomes such a big thing, which we'll continue to talk about this. Um, And then also just kind of understanding the psychology of belief, right? Presenting information that conflicts with existing beliefs can cause psychological discomfort, which people naturally resist, right? You know, so we have to be more strategic about the ways that we kind of point out these conflicts and how. And I'm not saying that we're doing it wrong per se. I'm not really one of those people who has a right or wrong when it comes to presentation, demonstration, communication. As a matter of fact, I'm incredibly averse to people who say there is a right way to do things because in most cases there just isn't that such thing because we're all so variable. And what works for one segment of the population may not work for another segment of the population. And even those segments of population are highly variable, which means people can be multi-segmented. People can be a part of this segment during certain seasons of the year, but then a part of this segment during other seasons. It's so variable. So it's not something that can be can really be depended on or strategized around in that way. So what I mean is we have to pay attention to the responses we're getting from the people that we're talking to. Now, so for me, this is why I'm very adamant that as of now, like my focus isn't believers, right? Um, because I don't have a way of talking to you that respects the delusion. I have a way of talking to you that respects you. But if you have attached your identity to the delusion, every time I call that shit a delusion, you're going to feel like it's a personal attack on you. Even if I'm not using the words delusion, because I know some of you say, well, of course you're using the words delusion. But even if I said, well, it isn't true, even if I said there is no evidence, there in the 90s there was this big thing, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That shit is not true. It's not. That's an excuse for people to be offended. It really is. Because if it is what you're saying that matters, not how you're saying it. If you understood what the fuck I said, then what I said worked. You know? It's the how. When we tell people it's not what you say, it's how you say it, you're giving the person who was going to be offended anyway the right to be offended. Because they say, oh no, if you just would have said it with a softer tone. Oh, okay. So let's just put it this way. You in the middle of the road. A truck is coming. I say, get the fuck out of the way. There's a truck coming. You're going to say, well, I didn't hear what you said because it's not what you said. It's how you said it. No, it's always what you say. That's how communication works. It's always what you say. It's always what you say. How you say is a whole nother situation. How you say does not actually change the what you said. You know, It just changes the way the other person feels about it, you know. And outside of intentionally just being a jackass, I'm always letting other people know, no, you're responsible for your triggers. You know, I'm like, do I need to write this shit down so you feel less offended? Like, and those areas, because I am an advocate in a very real way for us all growing the fuck up. You know, like we, like, damn, like, please, let's grow the fuck up. He cussed at me. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I remember, like, I cussed at a mechanic one time because he screwed me over. Like, and when I say screwed me over, man, I got to tell this story. I cussed at him. I don't even remember what I said. It probably wasn't nothing major because I don't name call. It's more like, man, this is some bullshit. It's stuff like that, you know. I got a call from I got so many calls from so many Christians after that, and this is after I had stopped pastoring and everything. I'm like, why the fuck are y'all calling me about this? Like, I ain't never tell y'all I didn't cuss. I don't know where y'all get that shit from. All right, anyway, so but individuals tend to seek out information that confirms their beliefs and ignore or dismiss opposing viewpoints. You know, so notice when believers, in violation of the Bible, mind you, come to my channel to comment, 99.9% of them show up to openly ignore or dismiss everything I'm saying. That's why my content is not for them. That's why I don't temper my words for their delicate sensibilities. You know, and that's not me being dismissive. That's me being realistic because I understand that discomfort I understand the discomfort that these discussions create for believers. Believers are not the ones that I'm interested in having these discussions, these conversations with. I want to have these conversations with people who are already comfortable with this kind of talk so that we can do the work of community so that when those dismissive believers start having serious questions, they'll have more than just a few videos for support. They'll have a community. They'll have people who've been doing the work, who've been preparing, who've been making room, you know? But I'm not going to talk to you before it's time. I'm not going to talk to you before you're ready. That does make me feel a little egocentric. You're not ready for me. But no, I mean that in the most realistic and the most humble, respectful way. Actually, I don't care as much about the humble part, but like I get why it's important to people. That's not important for me to convince you that I'm humble. I don't, you know, if you think I'm humble, if you think I'm not, doesn't do anything to me at all. So, but the big point is that we be here, you know, and of course, direct challenges often activate defense mechanisms, and it makes meaningful dialogue difficult. And really, if I'm gonna have a conversation, I want that conversation to be meaningful, which means you either have to have something of value to contribute to the conversation, or you have to be able to respect the value that I bring to the conversation. And most Christians who are coming to my comments, and most Christians who want to engage me in conversations are people who I do not see of having anything of value to bring to the conversation because we have a fundamentally different worldview. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't consider them valuable as people. I just don't consider their input valuable for this conversation. There's nothing you could say to me that I'd be interested in about the belief system. Now, if we were having conversations maybe about just your experiences, then maybe I'd be interested in that dialogue. But if you're trying to have a conversation with me to convince me that Superman is real, I don't want to have that conversation. And that's why I'm very intentional about framing things that way. Because just reminding people that fiction is fiction, regardless of how old it is and regardless of how sacred other people treat it. So if you know that if anybody came up to you and start trying to have a serious conversation with you, like a serious conversation with you about why Tony Stark, Iron Man, died to save the world and why you should owe him your reverence. How would you seriously approach that conversation? If you have some type of emotional intelligence about you, you're going to understand that having that engaging that conversation with that person is doing more damage than anything else. If they sincerely believe that, then you know that they have an issue that is beyond your control. I'm not saying what that issue is, which I know many of you are thinking you may know what it is, but I am more nuanced in my ideology than most. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a mental issue. I mean, it is a mental issue, not necessarily a mental health issue, but it is a mental issue, and it does impact health. Man, I'm gonna have to do some more videos on cognitive development, because that's another area that we're not calling out. We think we're protect like, and again, I don't know why. Like, there's so many people in the secular community that they they sound like they're trying to be protective of people, but in many cases they're still just being protective of the bullshit. You can protect people without protecting the bullshit. So if we know that a person who sincerely believes that Chancellor Palpatine has somehow returned, mhm, and is a major threat, and is out here trying to warn other people about it, and out here trying to get other people to vote accordingly, we would know that there is something sincerely wrong, and that this is a threat to society, and this is a threat to that person's own development and efficacy. And we would treat it accordingly. You know? And so, like, no, I'm not going to have these conversations with people because they're not serious conversations. And the people that hold these conversations as serious are the people who really need our help. And they need help. Like, there's one that I remember when I was, I think, on Skeptic Haven one time with Dr. Ray, Dr. Darrell Ray. And we were talking to somebody, and Dr. Darrell is a professional. He's having a conversation. He realizes that this person has issues that go beyond anything that us just being on a YouTube channel is actually going to be able to help. And so he ends the conversation, because when you do understand how psychology works, you can kind of depress your own ego, because that's what a lot of people have. Is like, I don't have this ego of believing that I can save you. I don't have that. I know when your problems are beyond me. You know, that's some internal work you're going to have to do. For some people, that's some professional work that they're going to need. They're going to need help with. And we shouldn't take professional as negative or stigmatized. Like, we all need some professional help. I wish everybody who was helping me was professional. That's good right there. And by the way, my definition of professional is thorough concern. I don't like people who have a problem with professionalism. Immediately, I don't want to work with them, because then I already know you're not going to be thoroughly concerned about your work. You know, which that's the whole thing. Like, people do have some really weird misattachments. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm using it. People have some really weird misattachments to the ideology of work. It's very interesting, and but that's another conversation. All right. So people rarely change their beliefs due to external pressure or arguments. Rarely. Instead, they often become more entrenched. Debates can often create a win-lose scenario where the goal becomes defeating the other person rather than understanding them. And, to be clear, I'm not against debates. I enjoy watching them. Sometimes I be itching to participate, but I almost like, so far, there has never been a debate that I've wanted to participate in to convince the other person, because I think we all kind of know that's not the purpose of a debate. Which I would be more interested in a dialectical conversation where two people who are on different sides are having conversations about a topic, and they're looking for the truth. They're not looking for which one of us is right. They're just looking for the truth. They're having conversations about it until they can get to the truth. And they're both very, it's a very, very open exchange. And it can be between two, three, or more, wherever two or three are gathered. It can be between, as many as you want, right? So I do prefer conversations like that. But I do enjoy debates, but I just think we always have to remember debates are typically for the audience. And even for the audience, it's not for convincing the audience. While yes, some people are convinced, when they go to debates, but those numbers by far and large are not significant. Um, by far and large, what people get out of a debate is sharpened skills, right? So when I'm watching, Matt Dillahunty debate somebody, I'm sharpening my skills. I'm listening to everything he's saying. I'm listening to those rebuttals. I'm sharpening my skills. When I listen to the people who are rebutting him, when I listen to the other side, the interlocutor, when I'm listening to them, I'm sharpening my skills. My typically people who go to a debate with their mind already made up. And that's on all sides, whether it's the people participating in the debate or the audience. They've already gone with decided whose team they're on. It's like going to a wedding. As soon as you get the invitation, you know which side of the church you're sitting on, you know, because you know who you got the invitation from. Come on, somebody. Now let me stop. All right. So yeah. Without openness, even the most logical or evidence-based arguments are unlikely to make an impact, which I think we just saw without this last presidential election. Which we can highlight this one as it's been different than any other election. This country has had a problem with logic and evidence for a long time. I don't think we should act like that's anything new. I think that's why I'm one of the people who is less shocked by the turn of events. Um, Either way, I would have been disappointed, and nobody seemed to care about that. And I'm not saying that they should. I'm not saying that they should, but it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes if other people are saying, well, like, both of these options are terrifying for me and my community. And you have other people saying, well, no, you just don't know enough. Fuck you. Do what we said you should do. And I'm like, oh no, that's going to be a big fuck you. As a matter of fact, that's going to be an A, B, C, D, E fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like that. But my hypothesis is that mind change happens on a spectrum of safety. People have to be able to identify a greater sense of safety on the other side of the change than they have in their current ideology. Going back to, like, this is what we're failing to do, to show that this side is safer. We talk about this side being freer, but then we have a lot of people on this side who are very vocal about how unsafe they feel. Okay? And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. Be vocal. That's the only way we know we need to be doing something about it. But at what point do we move from just saying that we're unsafe to some of us saying, okay, we need to start doing some things? And to be clear, there are some of us doing that, right? There's recovering from religion. There's freedom from religion. There's atheist, American atheist. There's we have stuff. We need more. What we got a few dozen. Or I don't even know if it's a few dozen, but maybe we got a few dozen organizations. They have a few hundred thousands. So we need to act like we're behind and catch the fuck up. But we also have to, like, it's almost like a lot of times the secular community seems to embrace this naturalistic mythicism. And I'm not saying anybody has said it. It's just the way things seem to happen. In the sense that, like, what are we trying to do? It's kind of like we're just having conversations amongst ourselves and hoping one day it gets better. And I'm like, but we no longer are connected to this ideology that of karma or of God making things better. We are of the ideology that if anything happens in this earth concerning us, we have to make it happen. So I'm not always as understanding of why we spend more time talking about what's wrong than we do strategizing about what we could do about it. And you'll see that's why I refuse to stay in certain rooms too long. If I know the conversation every time is just going to be what's wrong, I'm going to stop coming to that room. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love discussing the problems, only if we're holding ourselves accountable to the solutions. Otherwise, that conversation has no utility for me. Our goal should be creating safety on this side, you know? And that's what I'm interested in. I think we're going to see the greatest impact when we make building locally grounded and globally connected community safe spaces a missional commitment coupled with a sincere intention to be strategically effective in all areas that matter. And two strategic areas that I think as a community, I think we as a community should really dedicate some conversations to is our marketing and our engagement, you know, like and our organization, you know, like literally, how are we organized? How are we connected? What do we do together? You know, it's nice that this organization has a convention and this organization has a convention and this organization has a convention. I'm not saying stop doing that, but let's all come together a few times. Let's all come together more than a few times, you know. And I'm not just talking about doing it for the sake of it. I'm talking about having the real conversations to make things happen so that we can be more organized, so that we can be more present, and we can be more present as a local force and as a global force. You know? So, but the marketing is what's attractive. What's attractive about our communities? And why aren't we talking about that more? You know? But I know it almost seems counterintuitive, right? What we think we should be doing is screaming about all the problems. That's what we think we should be doing. That feels like the right thing to do. As a matter of fact, if someone hits you, you know, you're ouch. That's a great reaction. But what happens next? If that person is going to continue hitting you, just saying ouch over and over again ain't going to change shit. Just saying, oh, they're hitting me. Oh, stop it. Why do they keep hitting me? Why is everybody hitting me? Oh my goodness, they're hitting me again. Hey, what they're doing to you is wrong. But that shit isn't going to change anything. At some moment, you've got to get out of that posture. You know what I'm saying? And say, hey, bitch, put your hands on me again. And I swear for God. You know what I'm saying? Gotta put yourself in a position to catch those hands. Wax on, wax off type of thing. And so we need to be spending more time talking about how to make our communities safe. This is a big thing. And we need to spend more time talking about what's attractive about our communities. Safety is attractive. Fun is attractive. Personal growth is attractive. Personal development is attractive. One of the things that breaks my heart is I'm coming across a lot of atheists that are happier than they've ever been, but unhealthy. And many of them feel helpless. You know? And those are the things that believers are often going to gravitate to as their reasons for staying on the other side. Because it's going to be like, you know what? See, look what happened. He fucked around and found out. They're either going to imagine that as God punishing that person, no matter how happy we're saying we are. Oh, but you lost everything. You lost your job. You don't got nowhere to work. Your mental health is deteriorating. And even though you know none of that has anything to do with the God, all of that has to do with, you know, social interactions, you know, or social social interaction. We'll stay with that. You know that all these things have naturalistic reasons behind them. But that person is, on one hand, either going to see that as God's punishment, or even if they're like, I don't believe in God, but it's just not worth it to let go of this. And that's the hand I get on the other side. And I'm not saying that's an easy problem to solve. They're not a bunch of easy problems. If we're only looking for the easy problems, we might as well give the fuck up now. We have to start planning long term. We have to go ahead and say, no, we're committed to this for generations to come, you know, and start planning that way and say, okay, if we expect anybody to feel comfortable deconverting, then this space needs to be safe and it needs to be attractive. People need to feel like they're going to be able to come here and not just shit on what they left behind. Like I said, we have to remember that leaving religion shouldn't just be about a letting go. It should also be a getting up, because we have a lot of work to do. You know, that's why I'm so adamant about community. It ain't even just about people deconverting, you know, it's about people growing so that we have more heads, hands, and hearts at the table. Because again, we're a bunch of space apes on a floating fucking rock in the middle of relative nowhere. You know, there is both fear and awe at work in me there. I'm afraid of what happens if a majority of our species remains preoccupied with superstition. There's a fear there, but there's also an awe of what can happen if just 10 to 20% of us as a species, not even 50, 60, 70, just 10 to 20% of us as a species finally come out of that cave of superstition and actually commit ourselves to the betterment of humanity, the betterment of our planet, and the exploration of the world around us. Oh man, I get filled with so much awe. Community isn't a one-stop shop. It's a bridge to the world of tomorrow. That's where I'm trying to get. I'm sorry. So marketing. But see, what I just did there was marketing. What I just did there was reminding us why secular community is an attractive idea. Carl Sagan was amazing at this. Man, Christopher Hitchens, amazing at this. We need to do a better job of marketing this, the human side, the side that is concerned for humans. With his abrasiveness, Hitchens probably did more for the secular community as far as people leaving religion than anybody. Just by giving his speeches and calling this shit out. And even though some people looked at it as, oh, this is just so ugly, there's just so much vitriol. And it's just like, no, this is pure love, man. This is pure love. It's a concern for people. It was attractive. But then also our engagement, like, what are we doing? And when I say what are we doing, I'm not like, no, what are you doing? No, literally, what are we doing for individuals? What are we doing for families? And you know, those are areas that we are really underserved in our community, in the secular community, and that's likely where we should have started. We should have started with it, figuring out, like, how do we help individuals, and then what are we doing for families, and then what are we doing for the communities that we live in? Then, hey, what are we doing as a community for fun? And then, most importantly, what are we doing for solutions? And as far as engagement, here's the hard part. You got to be doing all that shit at the same time. You know what I'm saying? That's why, like, all these little once a month gatherings, I'm like, you ain't trying. No. It's like y'all trying not to work. Don't, don't, don't let me get out here and outwork y'all. I mean, that's what I plan to do. I mean, and that's not personal. That's just me. Do the work, do it right, do your best, do the most. I have an outcome that I'm trying to get to. I'm determined. No, let me use, I am motivated. I am ambitious. I am persistent. I am purposeful. I am taking the wheel. I am the driver. You know, that's just a little promo for the current Sunday session series we're in now, which is called Drive. All right, I got to wrap this up. All right. Also, we've got to consider the natural process of mind change. Genuine change often begins when individuals themselves start to question their beliefs. If they haven't already started asking these questions, nothing that I'm saying is going to sound like answers. You know what I'm saying? A rule of thumb is that anyone challenging you to change their mind is not actually open to having their mind changed. It's more so an opportunity for them to demonstrate that they know better than you. That's typically what that is. It's an invitation to a debate, and the whole purpose of the debate is to sharpen my skills against your ass. You know, um, and if I'm going to debate with somebody, they need to be another sharp rock. If I'm gonna be sharpening myself against you, you gotta be. It's gonna sound a little condescending, but you gotta be worth sharpening. Like I'm not I'm not debating people in my comments because you're just gonna dull my sword, man. We're not doing that. But no. So and that's the thing that I know. Like, and that's the thing. People will try to present it like they're really wanting a genuine conversation, but I'm like, I know this trick works on other people. It doesn't work on me. This shit ain't worked on me since I was a kid. You know, like one of the smaller kids come over to you and say, "I bet you can't push me on this swing." That shit don't work on me. I'm not about to push you because you challenged me that I couldn't. I'm not. No, I grew up a long time ago, but that's partly because I had very shitty parents. So I had to grow up on my fucking own, you know, and I'm actually thankful for that. You know, I have a speculative hypothesis that, man, kids might kids might do better if you just drop our asses off in the woods and let us fend for ourselves. We might do better because damn, these adults have been toxic as fuck. You know, I wonder is that what my kids will say about me? It's going to be interesting. All right, so there's also personal experiences, life events, exposure to new ideas, or personal reflections are often the things that prompt reevaluation and mind change for people. And I want you to watch how community fits perfectly here. When people experience impactful life events, whether it's the death of a loved one or a diagnosis or anything, you know, just anything that makes them begin to think about their lives existentially, um, or reevaluate their beliefs, they often seek out safe spaces to have those conversations, i.e., community, you know? And the spaces that they're going to seek out are spaces that are going to be readily available. And the only way for that space to be readily available is for it to be routinely occupied. This is why I'm encouraging as many secular communities as possible to get out of this quarterly and monthly stuff. And you need to, at the very least, be meeting weekly in your local community, publicly somewhere. Otherwise, how the fuck will people know how to find you? And honestly, you need to be trying to move more than weekly. And if you're worried about burning people out, there is a easy solution to that. Don't require people to be at everything you're doing. Like, I think sometimes the secular community makes shit harder than it really is. Oh, well, we don't want to do that because churches do that, and then people be stuck at church all week. Well, people are stuck at church all week because people have tied attending to pleasing a God. All you have to do is don't attach attendance with pleasing a God. It's not fucking rocket science. Make it clear that people can come when they want to come because that's what it's about. It's for them. The only people who need to be there are the people who are responsible for making things happen. And even them, if you have enough of them, you can rotate them in and out. Again, this shit is not rocket science. I hate when we pretend that there are problems that are not real problems, you know? So, yes, I do encourage secular community organizations, please do something to be visible weekly in your local area if you want to make a local impact. You know, what good is a library if it's only open 1 month, 1 day out of the month? You know, what good is group therapy if it's only available 1 day out of the month? You know, but then again, the other one was people are often exposed to new ideas when gathering with others. It's also community and intentional conversations about personal growth often happen in groups of concerned peers, i.e., community. And just that last one, change driven by internal factors is more sustainable than change imposed from external sources. You know, so creating community safety to me is more effective than individual confrontation. Um, and so we also have to understand the role of readiness and willingness. Psychological models suggest that people go through stages: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance when changing beliefs or behaviors. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Until someone reaches the contemplation stage, they're not going to be receptive to new perspectives, you know? But the beautiful thing about that is that's just the second stage in the process. And we already talked about what typically happens to get them into this process: life events, exposure to new ideas. These are all things that community can create when conversations themselves can't, you know. And engaging before someone is ready can actually hinder their progress and damage that relationship, which just makes things delayed. One of the interesting things that I've noticed among cultural Christians who start deconstructing is that they often seek out alternative denominations or spiritual communities, often not really looking for something new to believe, but simply looking for a safer space to ask different questions. In most cases, people settle for a new false belief that is less superstitious because they cannot even imagine the possibility of a group of atheists who are so committed to people that they create weekly space for the important life conversations. So, again, many people who are still believers are not believers by choice. They're believers because they don't see any other options. Yeah. Yeah. Even though we do, and we're doing it more and more, there are more and more atheist communities who are doing this. I constantly highlight the work of Sunday Assembly, Oasis, and now the Bridge. Here we are. We're here to join the fray. You know, so by producing videos and materials, I'm generating resources that individuals can access privately when they're open to exploring new ideas. This approach allows individuals to engage at their own pace without putting me in a position where I feel like I'm coercing somebody or somebody feels like they're being coerced. And over time, our content can cover various topics, increasing the chances that something will resonate with someone who's seeking new answers. Um, Recognizing that it's not my role to change others respects their autonomy. And hopefully, for the ones that get it, promotes mutual respect. Acknowledging the limits of my influence prevents the conversation from becoming about ego or superiority, because quite frankly, I'm only interested in utility. Understanding rather than judgment fosters a more excuse me a more compassionate perspective. Believers may find it hard to believe, but my disinterest in engagement is from a sincerely considerate and compassionate place. Um, I don't want to fuck with your mind. If your mind ain't ready to be fucked with, you don't want to have conversations with me. You know, people are often influenced by their immediate social circles. Changes occur when they observe shifts in those around them. And again, that's a big hint that community will potentially catalyze a lot of the things that we're wanting to happen. Repeated gentle exposure to new ideas can gradually reduce that resistance. Um, and then providing a non-judgmental space encourages openness and vulnerability, which are essential for change. Which again, that's community. So people can say, "Well, Darante, you must not really care about the believers." No, it's this work. I care about people. It's the work of community that I'm doing. I'm not interested in having conversations with people who aren't ready for those conversations, but I am interested in building community for people when they're ready, you know? Change is a process that can take months or years. And so patience is what is necessary to acknowledge this reality. Even if immediate change doesn't occur, planting the seeds of thoughts can bear fruit of labor. Waiting until someone seeks out important information respects their boundaries and agency. And it also gives us time to strategize as a community to ensure that our community spaces are safe, sound, soft, and secure so that when they come, they feel safe enough to connect and secure enough to navigate their own ideas. Um, the goal is to foster supportive community and inclusive spaces, to encourage dialogue among those who've undergone similar journeys, offering support and shared experiences. That's who I'm looking for with my conversations. And then while doing so, to encourage skills that empower individuals to evaluate information critically and highlight common ground, such as the pursuit of truth, understanding, social safety, to bridge gaps. See what I did there? Welcome to the bridge. All right. And, encouraging, engaging indirectly, which is what I typically do with my bot, allows me to observe and learn from the behaviors of others, which enriches my understanding of people activity. And that's what allows me to pour into this content. And then just recognizing the limitations of my influence helps to prevent frustration and maintain my sense of well being as well. With everything on my plate, arguing with people about the existence of Superman would certainly lead to burnout. And maybe that's something that some of them are secretly hoping for or praying for. But focusing on our growth ensures that we're prepared to assist others effectively when they're ready. And that's important to me that we don't get distracted, delayed, or detoured by people who aren't ready. My goal right now is community growth and self improvement, you know. And so by choosing not to engage directly with believers who are not ready to reconsider their views, I am respecting their personal journey and avoiding counterproductive confrontations. Understanding the psychological mechanisms behind belief and change allows me to adopt what I consider to be a more effective strategy, providing resources and support for when individuals are genuinely open to new to new perspectives. This approach is rooted in empathy, patience, and a recognition of the complexities of human cognition and social dynamics. When the time comes, we have a growing global community who have generated literal universities worth of thoughtful and accessible content that will be there to guide them on their path toward a more realistic view of the world around them and the people that they share this world with. When that time comes, we'll be ready. Until then, I will continue to ignore the hell out of these motherfuckers when they're in my comments. They will only get the bot response. And I'm doing that because I care. And I'm doing that because I don't have time to waste. And I'm doing that because I only want to do those things that are actually going to lend themselves to the outcomes that I'm looking for in this world. All right. That's all the time I have for now. I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation. If you haven't already, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider supporting, joining, or connecting with this community channel or content in any way that makes sense for you. And then, of course, check out our merch because we have some of the dopest merch out there. And check out our books. And there are more coming. All right, that's all I have for now, man. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and if you can, stay beautiful. I'll holler at you later.